overlapping. So let's go to our slides, check overlapping, and come back to our text editor. Overlapping element. I'm going to use the Z index property, right? When you use relative, fixed, or absolute positioning, boxes can overlap. If boxes do overlap, the elements that appear later in the HTML code sit on top of those that are earlier in the page. So the one that will come later will definitely come and override the previous or the earlier element. So when you have 2 or 3 elements, and then the first one will always be the one at the bottom, whilst the second will be on the first, and then the last one will be on top of the first 2. If you want to control which element should sit on top, you can use the Z index property to do that. Its value is a number, and the higher the number, the closer that element is to the front. For example, an element with a Z index of 10 will appear over the top of one with a Z index of 5. Paragraphs are relatively positioned. By default, they would appear over the top of the heading as the user scrolls down the page. To ensure that the element stays on top, we use the Z index property on the rule of the element. The Z index is sometimes referred to as the stacking context. If you are familiar with desktop publishing packages, like if you are familiar with Publisher, and then you are designing your boxes, one will tend to overlap the other. So you will have to know how to do your floating such that each one or one will bring to the you bring one in front of the other, or you send one to the back. You have to do your arrangement using the Z index property. Now this is an example I want to use to explain. Now if you check this particular example, there's a header, a heading which is fixed, no space on top of it, margin is 0, padding is 0, just like we did in the earlier example, but it has a Z index of 10, and then the paragraph is relative, 70% pixels from the top and 70 from the left. Okay, let me show you how this is going to look in our browser before going to floating elements. And this is my text editor. I'm going to clear this and replace it with the Z index. I'll save it and then I'll refresh my browser to see. Now this is, if you check from our CSS code, for the paragraph we say the paragraph should be relative, 70 pixels away from the top, and then 70 from the left as well. Whilst the heading should be fixed, it should be the top, okay, it should be 0 pixels away from the top. You shouldn't leave any space. By default, the margin should be 0, left should be 0. That means that it is attached to the window. You can clearly see it here, you see, so there's no space. Okay, so it has been what? It is 0 pixels from the left. That means it should be attached to the left. Margin to is 0, padding is 10. So padding is just the space from the edge of the box to the text, and a Z index of 10. So when any element has a Z index of 11, it should come definitely on top of our heading. But if it has less, then it means it should come under our heading. So that's what Z index does.